eyebrows. So we say, what were they thinking? That does it for us tonight. Thanks for joining us. Banfield, up next.
Hi, and welcome to Summer Wednesday. Yes. Every single day of the summer, I will call it summer something because it's summer. And we are on the verge of like fireworks, right? July 4th. But I have a big show for you tonight to sort of get you launched. Here's something. Fresh off of the Karen Reed murder trial, there's something hinky going on in that community. Canton, Massachusetts. Young girl, Sandra Birchmore. Apparently, according to a lot of allegations, including the current police chief in that area. At 15 years old, she was being molested by a number of police officers. Remember the whole Karen Reed defense? The police officers were corrupt. There was a conspiracy. As it turns out, there may have been another conspiracy in the same community. And because the spotlight was on Karen Reed, the frayed light has gone back to this case. Now, this case is a few years old, but this young woman was found hanging, 3 months pregnant, thrilled to be having a baby, telling her friends that it was the cop who was the father, a married cop who allegedly had been having inappropriate relations with her since she was 15. And not just him. A couple of his friends on the force, too. I've got the whole story for you. And the newer development, which is a forensic pathologist said that wasn't suicide. That was murder. Okay, that's coming. Also, little girl named Madalena, 11 years old, she steps off the bus and she's not seen again. And it's been almost 2 years. You would think that mom would scream from the rafters, help me find my girl. But for 3 weeks, she didn't say a word. To anyone, not to the police, not to the neighbors, no one. She said nothing. It was actually the school that finally alerted the authorities that this little girl was missing. And now she's a suspect. But why 2 years? Like, why? Tonight we've got the police to talk to us about the case. And then also, have I got a deal for you? It's kind of like the crime real estate show tonight. I have a $30 million house. Sorry. I have a $70 million house. I just slightly out of all of our price range. And I also have a $350,000 house. They are both connected to a lot of cop activity. But this one in particular, take a peek. This is the 350, definitely not the 70 mil. The listing says 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 4 acres. But then it has this little bit of fine print, and that says, there is a very tragic situation with this home. Please have your realtor investigate for you. Do you know what happened in this home? Do you recognize the interior? You might recognize the exterior. You might recognize the yard. Some terrible things happened in that yard. And it'll be curious to find out about a buyer. Okay, all of that coming in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. I have to tell you that story, especially the $70 million house and why it's on the market. Again, adjacent to criminal activity. First, I want to begin in Canton, Massachusetts. I want to talk to you about an unexpected and clearly unnatural death in that tight-knit community just south of Boston. There is scandal. There are allegations of police conspiracy and cover-up. And there's an active criminal investigation. And there's a civil suit from the victim's family. And before you yell at your television and throw peanuts at me saying, I already know everything there is to know about the Karen Reed story, and I'm way ahead of you, Ashleigh. Before you do any of that, this is not that story. This is the story of Sandra Birchmore. And it is a hell of a story. Sandra was found dead in her apartment back in February of 2021. Her death was more than a year before the now infamous death of the Boston police officer in that same town, the one that ended up with Karen Reed being charged for murder. This is a year before that. Sandra Birchmore was 23 when she died, and she was 3 months pregnant. Officially, the manner of death was called a suicide, and the cause of death was called hanging. But now that seems to all be in dispute, and that is where those police connections come in. Sandra loved the police. Look at her. Here she is. She's so tiny. When she was 13, she loved the police so much, she joined something called the Explorers Program of the Stoughton Police Department. That's when she officially met that guy that she's photographed with, then Deputy Chief Robert Devine. He's the one proudly standing next to her in that picture. She stayed in that Stoughton Police Explorer Program for 6 years until she was 19. But then according to a lawsuit filed after her death and after an internal police investigation, Sandra did not learn the best practices of policing. Hell no. Sandra learned the exact opposite. The allegations say that that young girl who only wanted to serve and protect as a kid was instead preyed upon and, quote, passed around and groomed by the male police officers that she most admired. The internal investigation named and accused these three guys, these three officers. Robert Devine, the one you saw in the photo, he's on the far right. And then these two twin brothers, Matthew Farwell, he's on the left, and twin brother William Farwell. Not one of these three has been criminally charged. All three of them left policing, left the department. The family's lawsuit claims that 4 days before Sandra's body was discovered, Officer Matthew Farwell was seen right there on police surveillance, hoodie up. This is her apartment. Sandra reportedly told friends that Matthew was also the father of her baby. And as you can see, as he departs right there through those doors, he may have been the last person to see Sandra alive. We have reached out to both the Stoughton and Canton police departments, as well as the medical examiner who ruled Sandra's death a self-inflicted suicide. They have yet to get back to us. I'm still waiting. I'm here. Put you on at any time. Mic is yours. For now, though, I'm giving the mic to someone else, NewsNation correspondent Caitlin Becker. She's been following this case very closely, and she's with me now live on this summer Wednesday. Caitlin, there are a lot of really uncomfortable details in this lawsuit from the family. Can you go over what a lot of these allegations point to?
Yeah, disturbing is putting it really mildly here. I think you have to remember, Ashleigh, that when we're looking at the time frame, she was just 13 years old when she joined this Explorers program, and that's what introduced her to the officers that would allegedly become her sexual partners. Now, in the lawsuit, as well as this internal police investigation, Ash, and that's what gets me, because the police have looked into this. They both essentially say the same thing, that when she was 15 years old, she allegedly lost her virginity to one of these officers and continued a sexual relationship, which included explicit photos, disturbing videos, explicit text messages, hundreds of them, with 3 of these officers and possibly even more. One of the most disturbing is the idea that she was allegedly passed around like a toy, and that William Farwell allegedly tried to introduce her to other officers within the department and encourage her to also develop a sexual relationship with them. And according to that internal police investigation, Ash, up into the time of her death, it's unclear if any of these had actually stopped happening. So multiple sexual relationships could have been going on at the same time. Of course, you already mentioned the fact that she believed the father of her child was Matthew Farwell.
Okay, and then so there's Matthew Farwell, and apparently they've got text messages, they allege, between Matthew Farwell, the alleged dad of this baby, 3-month pregnant Sandra, and the alleged text messages between them suggest that he acknowledges taking her virginity April 2013, where if you do the math, she would have been 15 years old. Have they presented those text messages?
You know, the thing is here that both the police investigation and the lawsuits, like I said, say the same thing. So it appears that they have copies of this. I mean, when the chief of police discussed this at a press conference, she said they went through hundreds and hundreds of these messages, parsed through them. It took a lot of time to see what these exchanges were like. They were very explicit. In some of them, there was the indication that perhaps they wanted to film some sexual encounters with her, the suggestion that she should have sex with other people in the police department. So it does seem that the police have looked through these already, but what we got was kind of just a strong admonishment but not criminal charges.
Yeah, there's this other, apparent exchange between the twin brother to the alleged father of the baby, and that twin brother's William Farwell. The allegations say that there's messaging between William Farwell and young Sandra, asking her to record herself having sex with other officers and send it to him.
And they were all seemingly aware that their coworkers, or in this case, siblings, were all engaged in a sexual relationship with this one person. And Ashleigh, some of these things actually happened on the job. There were allegations and indications in these messages that they actually happened inside of some of the police cruisers. So it's really, really disturbing stuff. And again, police have all of this information. They have all the evidence. So it's mind-boggling that there haven't been charges.
Real quickly, as far as Officer Devine, who ended up becoming the, deputy chief there, apparently there are messages, quote, that he was having an inappropriate, suggestive contact with Sandra while she was one of the explorers in that little program, and, quote, full-fledged sexual encounters by the year of 2020. So I got 30 seconds left for this, but the chief now is Chief Donna McNamara. It sounds like Donna McNamara is devastated and angry over all of this. Are there going to be charges if they have all this, text messaging evidence?
That really remains to be seen. And you're right, she is angry. She said as much in a press conference and in statements. She's had strongly worded things, but she did even indicate that as officers, they were sort of derelict in their duty and they had lied and they had covered up things. So she's aware of that. It's curious that there haven't been any charges. And of course, we have two sets of charges that we could be talking about here. There are the alleged sexual assault charges against these guys. And now there is the question as to whether or not this suicide was in fact a homicide, according to Dr. Michael Botter, who came in and discovered that the hyoid bone had broken, which is not something that typically happens in a hanging, but it happens in a strangulation. So we could be looking at two sets of charges, and it does seem that the investigation is ongoing.
I mean, this is not even sexual. This is sexual assault of a child if these text messages ring true. Caitlin Becker, thank you for doing the job for us tonight. I appreciate it. Have a good time off on the 4th. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Ash.
Okay, I want to bring in Melissa Berry now. Melissa Berry runs the Justice for Sandra Birchmore Facebook page, which has almost 10,000 members. Melissa, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I am so perplexed by this story. I still can't get my head around why they don't think they have enough to go after these three guys and any of the others that are alleged to have had underage sex with this young girl. But you just heard, as Caitlin Becker reported, we're talking about two potential sets of criminal activity, the child rape and then also a potential murder. Why is it, other than this hyoid bone being broken in her neck, which might suggest that it's not suicide, why is it that many others believe that Sandra did not take her own life, that she was indeed murdered instead?
Well, I appreciate you having me on today. Because the manner of how her hanging was, she wasn't hanging from like a pole or something. She was actually in a fully seated position. The ligature was tied around her neck and around the door handle very tight. And that's usually a type of manner of death that prisoners kill themselves, not a young woman of 23. Usually people who hang themselves, they're elevated. She was fully seated, and just the circumstances of him leaving and how he came, and he was the last person to see her, the way he came in with the mask on, the hood up, and the baseball cap, head down. It was very suspicious how he came in and out of her building.
And we should be really clear here that Sandra did not seem to indicate to any of her friends that she was displeased about being pregnant. It seems to me she was actually preparing, and it seemed that she was excited. What do you know about that?
Yeah, she was telling anyone who would listen that she was pregnant. She was excited. She was buying a carriage. She bought a baby seat that actually got delivered the night that she died. And she also was buying tons of baby clothes. She was calling old friends, high school friends, and telling them that she was pregnant. She was absolutely excited to have this baby. So that's another reason why a lot of people don't think that she did commit suicide.
And she had told friends of hers that it was indeed Officer Matthew Farwell, a married man, much older than she. She was telling friends he was the father?
Yes, and she was also telling co-workers that he was the father.
Co-workers as well. All right, so now the connection to the Karen Read case, because we're in the same geographical area, all of these towns together. Is there any other crossover with the Karen Read case to Sandra Birchmore's case?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of police officers the same from the Canton PD, like Michael Lank. There's state troopers that are the same DA, so there's a lot of crossover because it's the same, she died in the same town as Officer O'Keefe. And so it's the same people who were investigating her case. It's different lead officers, but it's still the same Massachusetts State Police unit that investigated both cases. So there's a lot of crossover.
It's bizarre. So, with all of the Facebook group, and, a lot of times folks who are in social media, they can do a lot of harm if they get a little too aggressive, but they can also unearth some things. Has it been helpful? Have there been any clues in this Facebook group? And if not, what is everybody hoping for in this case that seems cold, but we know it's not?
Well, I've been gathering information on this case for a little over a year and a half, and I have been talking to family, friends, and people are just coming forward saying they didn't believe that she thought she killed herself, that people didn't believe that they thought she killed herself, and that, they want to make sure that justice is done for Sandra and her baby, because she deserves that in death, that she is treated better than she was treated in life by these officers. The police department failed Sandra. We need them to pick up the slack and actually stand up for Sandra. And right now they're not.
And you know what? I want to just mention, as we look at that video, and I'm going to ask our control room to play it again, of Matthew Farwell coming in and out of Sandra's apartment in the days before she was discovered dead. He was apparently there for about 20 minutes. And as you can see, he walks in, he walks out, but his story was that he was there to end the relationship. That's what he told the police. Melissa Berry, I really appreciate you being on. Thank you so much for this. And keep us posted with anything that you hear with this group.
I really appreciate you having me on. Getting Sandra's case out there means the world to us. Thank you.
Well, it won't be the last time. Thank you for this. I want to bring in Stacey Honowitz now. She heads up the sex crimes and the child abuse unit in the state attorney's office in Broward County, Florida. Also, Stacey Honowitz, I always turn to you when I'm confused about cases like this because you know so much. I mean, you've just done so many years, I dare say decades, investigating this kind of thing. When you looked over the details of this case, what stood out to you and what do you see as potentially happening now that the Klieg lights are on this case?
Well, Ashleigh, first of all, it's not unusual for people that are very disgusted with what's gone on to kind of have this grassroots effort. And we have seen cases, you and I have both discussed cases where it's the public that's brought it to the attention of the police departments, of other institutions. And that's what we're seeing here. So what stands out? Who knew that she was having sex with these men while she was underage? Did she tell anybody? Did she let anybody know that she was being molested? Was she upset? Did she want to go to the police? Did she not go to the police because she was working with the police? And certainly in these explorer situations, most of the police departments do engage in these kind of programs. And so these kids are so excited to be working there that the last thing they want to do is then turn around and report a police officer who's mistreating them. And that's what we're seeing here. Now we're seeing all of these text messages. We're hearing all these witnesses saying, we knew that she was having sex with these older police officers. Why didn't anybody do anything at the time? Why is it taking it now when she's not here to kind of figure out whether or not charges can be brought. And that's what you're seeing now. This overall investigation, it's not going to be investigated directly by that agency because there's a conflict of interest. We know that. Even though somebody new has come in, you still have a lot of the officers that were there at the time. So I'm sure they're bringing in maybe even the Department of Justice, the FBI, to go over all of the evidence that they now have based on the civil lawsuit and based on these messages and the witness statement. So it's a wait and see. I wish I had the answer to tell you why they didn't do something. I have no idea.
And we have the sex crimes. But now we also have an allegation from the family that this may have been murder. And then Dr. Michael Batten coming in and looking at the files. He did not look at the body. Apparently she was cremated. He can't look at the body. But from the files, he says that hyoid bone was broken, and that does not happen in a hanging. So he says this is more like a murder than a hanging. Stacey, I'm going to call you back when we get more details on this. Do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Ash.
Always love talking to Stacey. I just want to make sure that, this is always tough. This conversation is tough. So I like to do this at the end of this kind of a report. If you or someone you know has been a victim of sexual assault, there is always help available. You can call this number at any time, day or night, 1-800-656-4673. It's also 1-800-656-HOPE. I always say it. Take a picture of your screen. Have it handy for when you may decide that you'd like some help. And still to come tonight, maybe he wants to make sure the feds never raid his LA mansion again. Or maybe P. Diddy just wants to make bank. But there is a $70 million piece of property for sale, Grammys not included. And hot off a DWI charge in the Hamptons, Justin Timberlake wants to own a bar in Scotland. Is that such a good idea with the timing? And wait till you hear who his partner is. Perez Hilton joins me live to make sense of all of this when we come back, because there's no one better in the business for this. Do you remember that enormous house belonging to Sean Diddy Combs that the feds raided back in March? I'm sorry. I should be more specific since they raided more than one of his enormous houses. I'm talking about this one, the Los Angeles house. This is the one they raided in March. You can see, they all got there in their Kevlar. And now you can own it. You. For a jaw-dropping $70 million. Who's with me? TMZ is reporting that Diddy is hoping to unload this sweet little pad. He wants it privately placed, though, off the market. And he wants $30 million more than what he paid for it back in 2014. 70 mil. Far be it from me to suggest that he needs the money, but I have also lost track on how many sexual assault and sex abuse lawsuits that are now pending against P. Diddy. Lately, he has been out of LA for the most part, so maybe he just doesn't need the place. He's been hanging out in Miami, but he's also been whitewater rafting in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. To be clear, what you are looking at right there is a river and not a creek, and he does have a paddle. All the double entendre intended. But we're going to see. Is he going to get the 70 mil? What does he need it for? A defense? But I digress because I have other celebrity real estate news. Justin Timberlake. He's got a big deal apparently in the works. Off the heels of his DWI arrest in Long Island, JT and a partner got the green light to open a sports bar in St. Andrews in Scotland. And the partner is that guy, Tiger Woods, who knows a little about what it's like to be busted for driving under the influence while famous. And then I also have this third celebrity story. It's a bit weird. It's Amanda Bynes. She has now become more of a spectacle than a celebrity, but it has been 2 years since this former child star's 9-year conservatorship ended. And since then, she launched a podcast, but then canceled it after one episode. And then she announced she was becoming a manicurist, but she failed the test and apparently has now failed it 7 times. And honestly, it is just hard to even recognize that this is Amanda Bynes. Take a look.
What's up, y'all? I wanted to make a post about this new Christian Dior shimmer powder that I'm rocking right now. I absolutely love it. Hey everybody, I just wanted to make a post to let you guys know that I'm going to start wearing wigs now. So I'm totally going to be wearing wigs now. For those of you that follow me, I am no longer wearing wigs. The wigs were just too much for me.
For expert insight into all of this, I turn to Perez Hilton. Of course, he is the king of celebrity news with millions of followers on X, on Facebook, on Instagram. He also hosts the Perez Hilton Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I want to go through all of these, so let's go rapid fire, Perez, and start with Diddy. Woof. $70 million for that home. Is that the kind of thing? First of all, do you think he needs the money because of all the legal fights that he's up against, or do you think he just doesn't want to be in LA anymore?
I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Most celebrities that you think are extremely wealthy are, but they're also, the majority of them, not very liquid. And Diddy is having to pay millions of dollars conservatively in legal fees. So yes, he needs the money. And I don't feel sorry for him. He still is living on a very fancy island off of Miami Beach. And I actually do think that he priced this accordingly. The home is in one of the most coveted areas of Los Angeles, Holmby Hills, and I expect there might actually even be a bidding war.
Oh man, that always blows my mind. When you get up to the 70 million range, I wonder if that's going to be on one of those Bravo TV shows, the bidding war over Diddy's mansion. Okay, but I also want to ask you about the pictures that he's seen whitewater rafting in Wyoming and having a great time. I'm not sure if he knew at the time the pictures were taken that there's a whole other storm brewing. Like he's got a whole other legal front, apparently. What is it?
Yeah, Diddy has just been sued yet again by an adult entertainer who has accused him of trafficking, which is one of the things that the feds have been investigating and why they raided his multiple homes earlier this year. She alleges to have evidence that this happened back in the early 2000s. And I expect that what happened with Cassie will happen with this case as well. One of the other reasons why Diddy is trying to get as much liquid cash as possible, because he will probably settle this lawsuit.
Okay, let's move on to Justin Timberlake. Maybe it was just bad timing, but it sure doesn't make for a good headline that he wants to buy a bar in Scotland on the heels of the DWI arrest, but then also the partnership that he chose. Why do you think that he chose to sidle up to Tiger Woods in this venture?
Well, everywhere celebrity equals money. And when you partner with a celebrity, 2 equals 3. So Tiger Woods and Justin Timberlake in a foreign country is even more valuable than in the United States. And what he's doing right now is going about business as usual. He has not released a statement apologizing for his drunk driving arrest. He has not admitted any fault. In fact, in a recent concert in Boston, Justin Timberlake made a joke about getting arrested for DWI.
Okay, I have 30 seconds left, but what is happening with Amanda Bynes? This is breaking my heart every time I see these videos.
Amanda Bynes is trying to figure out her way in life. She is somebody that used to be a real friend of mine, and she has good parents who have her best interests at heart and are also trying to let her figure things out. It's mental illness is what it is. There might be drugs in the equation as well, but the bigger picture is she's not all there. And I worry about who she's surrounded herself with, and I just wish her the best.
I do too. Every time I see these videos, I get sad. And I think about the conservatorship and whether these things should end and whether you have the right just to be unusual. But Perez Hilton, thank you so much. I knew you'd have the answers to all of it. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Love having Perez on. Okay, so coming up, how many public defenders can you fire, piss off, or break down before a judge finally says, yan yo? The Florida woman who's about to stand trial for murder by suitcase, she could tell you the number is 8. But it may just be that having no lawyer works better for Sarah Boone than having any lawyer at all. And guess what? She's not the only one. I'll explain next.
To reach adulthood. That's why vaccines matter so much. For 40 years, Rotary and partners have delivered vaccines globally. Like here and even here, in your neighborhood and around the world, Rotary is ensuring children grow up safe from preventable diseases.
If you're watching this program, I am more than certain that you are aware of your constitutional right to an attorney if, God forbid, you are ever charged with a crime, or maybe you have been. You also know that if you can't afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Again and again and again and again, that will happen if you cannot seem to find the right one. But there is only so much the system can take. And when it comes to Sean Williams, it appears that the system has shut down. Sean Williams is that accused child pornographer / rapist / fugitive in Johnson City, Tennessee. Remember him? Remember the guy he's accused of drugging and raping and filming dozens of women and children before he escaped a police van and then went on the run for almost a month before being caught. He is now facing 2 federal trials this summer alone, and he's already on lawyer number 4. Number 3 backed out in May, saying that Williams refused to cooperate. Number 4 also wants off the case, but the judge said no. The judge also said that if things go any further south with lawyer number 4, Mr. Williams will be left to defend himself. And speaking of that happening, do you remember Sarah Boone, right? Down in Florida? The woman accused of zipping her boyfriend into a suitcase and then ignoring him as he begged for help and suffocated and died. Her judge gave her 4 lawyers and then gave her 4 more, but she burned through all of them. And now the judge has told her there will not be a 9th lawyer. Boone is going to have to represent herself. What? I keep wondering if that's going to backfire. Who better to ask, though, if it will, than Dave Ehrenberg, state attorney for Palm Beach County, also in Florida, and very, very smart. Let's start with Sean Williams, okay? Let's go back to the Sean Williams. I know, I just keep thinking, how is this possible? If a judge is fed up with a crazed defendant who just can't seem to get it right with the free lawyers that they're provided, how can they be forced to represent themselves? Because I just smell a ineffective assistance of counsel appeal.
Ashleigh, good to be back with you. You know, it's not an unlimited right to a lawyer. I mean, you can't postpone things indefinitely by continuing to have problems with your lawyer, getting fired by your lawyer or firing your lawyer, and so that the case never gets heard. I mean, victims have a right to get their case done. The public has a right to have a case heard. And so it's not an absolute right that you get to choose anyone you want, no matter how many times it takes. So at some point, the judge has the discretion to say enough is enough. If you can't get along with your 4th lawyer, you're not going to get a 5th. You either have to represent yourself, or if you want to hire your own lawyer, and as long as they can get ready by the deadline, they can represent you too. So let's just play the game here. Sarah Boone is on her own. She's going to have to represent herself. And what's the old expression? A man who has himself for a client has a fool for a client, or a fool for a lawyer, or both. I can't remember. But so let's say she loses and then chooses to appeal based on ineffective assistance of counsel. How does she then go into the appellate process and point the finger at herself and question herself for being lousy at her job? Yeah. First off, ineffective assistance of counsel appeals are very common and they rarely work. So that's number one. And secondly, no, she's not going to be able to make a legitimate claim of ineffective assistance of counsel after she got fired by 8 of her lawyers plus a 9th that she tried to hire out of her own pocket because she can't communicate with them. In fact, apparently she wants them to proclaim her innocence when there's a video that shows she's guilty. So she should listen to her lawyers. But now the judge has had enough. You know that TV show, Ashleigh, 8 is enough? There's a reason why they said 8 is enough. Because in the law, too, you don't get a chance at number 9. So she better represent herself or find her own lawyer next time.
You are showing your age, young man, with 8 is enough. Okay, real quickly about Sean Williams. The lawyer, or the judge said that this last 4th lawyer is not allowed to get off the case. The lawyer wanted off the case, and the judge said no. And that made me wonder, well, how effective will his counsel be? And can't Sean Williams then turn around and say, this guy hated me and was forced to do the job, therefore ineffective assistance of counsel?
Now, he could have a claim of ineffective assistance of counsel if his lawyer tanks the case, but lawyers take an oath and they risk getting sanctioned by the bar if they undermine their own case. So I suspect that even though that lawyer doesn't want to be there, that lawyer will do the best job that they can.
And if that lawyer really screws up, yeah, then Williams could have that on appeal. But again, that kind of argument on appeal rarely works.
Key 3 words, that they can. Best job that they can, given the client beside them. Dave, have a great 4th of July. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Ashleigh. You too.
We'll see you soon. Okay, still to come, a missing child case that has police in North Carolina kind of stumped. More than a year and a half has passed since 11-year-old Madalena Kuchikari stepped off this school bus and then was never seen again. But make no mistake, this is not a cold case. After all this time, police do finally have a suspect. And wouldn't you know it, it's someone she knew and knew very, very, very well. Details next.
So we made meat out of plants. Because we aren't quitters. Impossible. We're solving the meat problem with more meat.
On Monday, we brought you the story of a little girl in a little town who walked off her school bus a year and a half ago and has not been seen since. This is Madalena Kuchikari, just 11 years old, and the last picture that we have of her from November of 2022. What's so upsetting, among other things, is that Madalena was missing for 3 long weeks and police weren't even told. And even then, it was the school who finally said something, not her mom. And that alone was enough to throw Diana Kuchikari and her husband in jail. But still no word. Little Madalena. The mom got out of jail a few weeks ago, time served for not reporting her daughter missing. But now police in Cornelius, North Carolina, have publicly named her as a suspect in the girl's disappearance. I'm joined now by Jennifer Thompson. She's the Deputy Chief of Cornelius Police. Thank you so much, Deputy Chief, for being on. What was Diana Kuchikari's story to the police for why she said nothing about her child being missing for all those weeks?
First of all, thank you for having me, Ashleigh. I really appreciate it. There were several different stories that we were told once police got involved, but nothing substantial other than she just didn't know.
She didn't know? I mean, it sounds certainly hinky, a mother who hasn't seen her daughter for an hour after school starts to get, panicked. Is there an issue of mental health here? Is there an issue that she seems suspicious when she talks to the police? What's her overall MO, her story?
Well, her story is the fact that she did not tell police that her daughter was missing for 3 weeks. And it took school officials pressing her to produce Madalena. And it wasn't until she was told to come to the school and bring Madalena with her that's when the school resource officer got involved and we began our investigation. So, Diana never reported her daughter missing. It was the school officials and the school resource officer that got the ball rolling in this case.
So when the school called Diana and said, hey, where's Madalena? Did Diana lie to them and say, all's fine, she's sick, she's somewhere else, she's visiting? Did she have stories for why her daughter wasn't in school? I'm just trying to get what she was saying all these weeks.
There was a variety of stories that she told the school, which obviously, provided some time. But ultimately, when we approached the 3rd week mark, the school wasn't having it anymore and demanded that she come to the school and bring Madalena with her. And then when Diana showed up by herself without Madalena, obviously it alarmed all of us.
So, Deputy Chief, once the police got involved, obviously, the school resource officer, the school, they call the police become involved. Did Diana just button up and not talk, or did she have also tall tales to tell the police about where her daughter was? When she was asked officially on the record, where's your daughter? What was her answer?
Yeah, so when we became involved in December 15th, of course, we tried to speak with her. And ultimately she was arrested the next day. So there were a variety of stories. Unfortunately, none of them led us to where Madalena was or why. But, it was pretty tight-lipped and, not a whole lot of solid information for any of us to go on.
I mean, and it's hard, right? Because there's parenting and there's parenting. And sometimes some people just don't parent, meaning, oh, I don't know, she got off the bus, she rarely comes home. And that could be true. That's the hard part of trying to assess whether someone is, the least bit truthful. So she served time for not reporting, but she's an official suspect now. What does that mean officially when she's a suspect? Like, how has her life changed, or how have things changed for her?
So Diana, Madalena's mother, has always been a person of interest in Madalena's disappearance. She's her mother. Madalena is 11 years old at the time of her disappearance. Mothers should know where their children are. And if you don't know where they are, you reach out to authorities for help. And that didn't happen. Once we got involved,
we should say. Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm just running out of time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have cut you off. But we should also say that so many people will say, well, what about the father? There was no father in this particular case. There was a stepfather who also didn't report and served time. But keep us posted, would you please, Deputy Chief, on this case. We're desperate to get answers, I'm sure, as you are, and those who love Madalena. And thank you for being on tonight. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
And right there is the number on our screen for anybody who might know about Madalena Kochikari, the Cornelius, North Carolina Police Department. Take a picture. I always say it. Take a picture of your screen, and then you'll have it handy for when you might need it. Coming up next, on paper, it sounded perfect. House for sale, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 4 acres. Again, perfect. Until you read the small print and the ominous warning. There is a very tragic situation with this home. Please have your realtor investigate for you. What your realtor would discover is that there was a guy who used to live there and used his backyard for more than just family barbecues. We've got the listing next. House in Rexburg, Idaho. It listed less than a week ago. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, almost 1,900 square feet, and actually seemed like a relative steal at $350,000. The listing actually says home with lots of potential on a 3.75 acre lot, large shop, other small farm buildings, dry pasture, area fenced, Fremont County with Rexburg address, and Sugar Salem schools. What is not to love? Maybe this other part of the listing, quote, there is a very tragic situation with this home. Please have your realtor investigate for you. The tragic situation is the murder of the homeowner's wife, which happened in the master bedroom, and the burial of 2 kids, which happened in the homeowner's backyard. The house for sale belonged to Chad Daybell before he moved permanently to death row in the maximum security prison in southern Idaho. This is where Chad Daybell murdered Tammy and burned and dismembered and buried the children of his second wife, Lori. Those kids, Tylee and JJ, were found in the pet cemetery and a separate shallow grave. Apparently somebody's okay with it, though, because after just 6 weeks on the market, the home already has a contract. Maybe the new owners will tear it down. Who knows? Almost next.
Hello, I'm Chris Cuomo. Thank you for the company. Now, a little disclaimer, okay? Proud to be at NewsNation, okay? But everybody's got to make their own witness in the times that we live in. And I am not like many people in my business. And there's a lot of diversity of opinion.